welcome to Varsity Extra in the 2012 football season. It might be 110 degrees outside and feel like 120, but football is in the air. I am editor Mark Heller, joined by Kyle Odegard, and we're going to try to make this short and sweet, but we want to do a quick breakdown, I guess, of how 2012 looks like. And Kyle, let's start with Division One. I know it was not quite the shot heard around the world last November when Desert Vista and Hamilton got together in the state championship game, and most of us by now know what happened. It was a thorough Desert Vista thumping, to many surprise. And I guess leading off, my first question to you is, given all the people that Desert Vista has lost, can they do it again?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Desert Vista could win another title, but they did it last year, and I didn't think they could do it then.
Not many of us did think they could do it then.
They looked good against Palo Verde last week. They were the first East Valley team to play, and they beat Palo Verde by 10 points. Their defense played really well. They have the talent. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the semifinals, or if the bracket works out, make another title game. But I think Hamilton and Brophy are still better than them, and they'll be the favorites.
Interesting, and that sort of leads into my second question, and I kind of personally don't think it's going to change very much, but the fact that Desert Vista beat Hamilton so thoroughly in that championship game, which is what people remember the most because it was most recent, whether that shifts the landscape at all with Division One. Do more teams suddenly feel like they have a shot?
Yeah, I think it helps because there was such an aura of invincibility around Hamilton. They won more than 50 games in a row. They stomped everybody in the regular season, but Desert Vista wasn't scared in that game. You could tell, and they got some momentum, and yeah, they really put it to Hamilton. I'm sure that helps people knowing that Hamilton isn't a team that's just going to beat everybody. If you put together a good game plan and you have the talent, you can play with them. So I still think Hamilton probably has the most talent top to bottom in the state, but it helps just mentally that you think you can play with them.
Yeah, the Huskies were pretty young. They have their entire offensive line returning, and a lot of speed on defense. Huskies coach Steve Bellis thinks this is the fastest top-to-bottom defense that he's had in his tenure at Hamilton, and that's a pretty long tenure and pretty good teams too. So we'll see how they mold together, but they're pretty excited about this season. In addition to Hamilton and Desert Vista, you also alluded to Brophy. Obviously, Tyler Brugman back at quarterback, Devin Allen at wide receiver, who could be a future Olympian in track and field, and a pretty good defense that also mostly returns. Can they knock off a Hamilton or a Desert Vista? And if not, if it doesn't happen, why not?
I think they can do it. I think, like I said, top to bottom, Hamilton probably has more talent. But when you have a guy like Brugman at quarterback and Devin Allen at receiver, there's two such key positions that a talented guy there plays such a big role that it really helps your team. And like you're talking about, the defense should be good. I don't know if they can. I think the problem would be that they're not as deep probably as a team like Hamilton, who's got waves of guys that can come in and be high caliber football players. But I think it's definitely those two atop Division One, and my pick is. I think Brophy's the preseason #1, and that's who we put in our rankings. So I think it's going to be a great game. Hopefully Hamilton and Brophy meet in the title game, because that's what I want to see.
Yeah, and a nice little tease by you. We'll get to some more predictions in a minute or two. The one thing that Brophy had, the perception that Brophy had going against it was the schedule was not real strong last year. And again, it's pretty much the same schedule. However, Saturday, an ESPN2 game, in fact, they will be playing Santa Margarita, which is actually lost a couple of key players in the last couple of weeks to transfer, but is widely renowned as at least a top 10, in many cases a top 5 program nationally. That game will be 7 o'clock on ESPN2 at Phoenix College, and that one should be very interesting, and that will certainly help competitively, I think, with Brophy in terms of its schedule. Let's go sort of beyond those big three, and we can argue about how big of a tier there is maybe between the Brophies and Hamiltons and Desert Vistas. A few other teams are certainly in the mix here, and I wanted to sort of get your gauge of the likes of a Red Mountain or a Desert Ridge. Mountain Point, who plays Hamilton in week 1. teams like that in terms of, can they make a run, and who among that group is most likely to knock their way into the semifinals or beyond?
Yeah, I think all of them have question marks, but all of them have talent. Talking about Desert Ridge, they made the title game 2 years ago in the semifinals last year, but they lost, Parker Rasmussen, Jordan Becerra, Joey Counts, who were really their big three. Jeremy Hathcock has a good program over there. You wonder, a lot of teams have to rebuild. Are they the type of program that's just going to reload every year like you see Hamilton and Chaparral do? I don't think Desert Ridge is a semifinal team this year because they have so many new parts and a new quarterback, but we'll know a lot more about them after the first few weeks. Mountain Point's another school that has a lot of talent. Quarterback's probably the biggest question there.
Yep.
Their quarterback transferred to Maricopa after last year, and ever since Kyle Fonts left a couple years ago, they've been searching for a guy to move the offense. So if they can find a quarterback, that's a team that could really make some noise in Division I. Chandler's a team that always has talent. Wonder if they can play defense. If they can, they have Division I athletes up and down that roster. They can make a run. So it's a lot of questions. Red Mountain's another good team, but they lost Marcus Brantley. So if you need to find a guy that can be that go-to star running back for Red Mountain, a game changer type guy at Red Mountain. So a lot of teams in that mix. I don't think any of those teams are at the Brophy, Hamilton, Desert Vista level right now. But certainly there's the capability for all those teams, and Basha, I think, should be thrown in there too.
Sure, absolutely. The Bears, like most of the other Chandler schools, lost a fair amount of talent from last year, and yet usually new waves of talent come in, and they've got a pretty darn good coach as well in Bernie Buskin. And we'll see how these tiers shake out. Again, nobody thought Desert Vista really had much of a shot against the Hamilton last year, and look what happened. So it's going to be a very interesting season in Division I with so many teams who feel like they've got a legitimate chance. Jumping quickly to Division II, Chaparral returns. Most of Chaparral doesn't return, but the school itself is having now won 3 consecutive state championships. And I guess my first thought is there a tier set up there similar to Division I, or will the likes of a Marcos Deniza and a Notre Dame really squeeze that gap between what was Chaparral and Centennial and the rest of Division II?
Right, yeah, it was definitely Chaparral and Centennial last year, and then kind of, everybody else, which was shown in the playoffs when that was really Chaparral's only tough test. I think Centennial is the team to beat this year, and then the next tier is kind of Chaparral, South Point, and Marcos Deniza. I think those are the 3 main contenders to Centennial, and then you have teams like you said, Notre Dame, and then Ironwood Ridge. Probably those 6, but really the top 4. I don't foresee anybody besides those 4 winning it.
Yeah, and Chaparral is going to be an interesting case because they are so much younger. And I think with the exception of Jake Rowe, who's a terrific wide receiver and defender, linebacker, pretty much the rest of that team is all brand new. They've got a new sophomore quarterback in Sean Paul Brophy, who they love his potential, but again, he's only a sophomore. Marcos Deniza, again, also brings back some key pieces with Priest Willis and especially with Priest Willis and a few other key guys, and they're also a team that's been loaded with athletes, and so it's going to be interesting to see if Chaparral comes back to the pack at all a little bit at least for now, under new coach Dave Huffine, and whether Marcos Deniza can, like you said, make that push to the next level.
And Chaparral did do it with a sophomore quarterback 3 years ago when Connor Brewer was there, and then
Correct.
They just ran through everybody the next 2 years. So if they can win it again this year, you might see another big run by them. That'd be amazing. Then they're looking at 4, 5, 6 in a row, but it'll be tough for them, I think.
Yeah, if Chaparral wins the title, this would be by far the most impressive of the recent championships. Division III, real quick. DJ Foster is gone. Is that obviously over at ASU now? Does that matter?
Nah, Saguaro has the most talent in Division III, I think, by far. You have Luke Rubenzer, their quarterback, and Christian Kirk, awesome wide receiver back. Ganna Adams came in from Shadow Mountain. He's going to be a great running back. I mean, that team's stacked, and I'd be surprised if anybody beat them.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's going to be hard to get past Saguaro and even Cactus in Division III. Seton Catholic reached the semifinals, lost to Blue Ridge. Can they do it again?
Yeah, they have a lot back. It's something where defensively they couldn't handle Blue Ridge last year. Blue Ridge just ran all over them. They're going to have to figure out a way. Maybe that kind of opened their eyes and realized where they need to be. I still think they're going to have a really good regular season. I could see them in the semifinals, maybe the championship game, but I think Blue Ridge is still too tough. Chance Cox out there.
Yeah, and then the schedule has certainly been advantageous to help Seton, certainly until late in the playoff time. Although there's no shame in losing to a Blue Ridge. Real quick, you already alluded to it. I like, and I'm not sure why because it's really boring, but I like Hamilton in Division I.
Can't go wrong with that.
I think that offensive line returning intact is a big deal, and I think their defense is for real. And the chip on the shoulder is cliche, but when you're dealing with high school kids and teenagers, that stuff comes into play. And I think the Huskies, A, have the coaching, and B, feel like they've got something to prove now. Like the aura of invincibility that I think existed to a degree is gone. And I think that's going to be a real rallying point for them.
And last time they got rid of that, they went on a great run. So, sure, I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton won it all. One thing I'm concerned about them is the type of athletes they have. If they can find an explosive guy on offense. Last year, Kendall Taylor did it. They didn't have much more. If a guy like Frankie Felix or Kevin Walters or Izzy Simpson, if those guys can make big plays, they should win it all. But last year, their offense made methodical drives, and they didn't score a bunch of points against some top competition. So I think Brophy is going to win it all personally. I like Brugman and Allen, and their defense is solid, and Marche Denard and Damani Gray are at running back. They have a lot of good weapons. They're balanced. I think it'd be a great championship game. Like I said, I really want to see those two teams play because they don't in the regular season. But we'll see. Yeah,
and no strangers between them in postseason matchups, and not necessarily a lot of love lost either between those two programs in many respects. Division II, I like Centennial. I think this is their year again, which sounds weird because they've been champions in the last 5 years. But I think with Chaparral down a bit, I think Centennial has enough returning talent to get there. And remember, Centennial pretty much had Chaparral on the ropes in last year's semifinals, a game that Chaparral eventually pulled out in the second half in pretty amazing fashion. But I think enough of Centennial's talent returns, and the rest of Division II I don't think is quite on their level, especially come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a great argument for Centennial. My personal prediction is Sal Point. I like how much they're bringing back. They lost in the first round last year, but they were missing a lot of guys against Notre Dame, and I think that might be motivation for them. Quarterback's coming back. Cameron Denson, who's one of the top players in the state's coming back. Top running back is back. Good defense. I think they have the tools, and I think they, if they can get battle tested, their schedule sometimes isn't as good being in Tucson, but if they put it together, I think they could maybe surprise some people and win it all.
Interesting. Do we all agree on Saguaro?
Saguaro
it is. That was quick, short, and easy. There you have it. That's a quick kickoff into the 2012 football season. A reminder, sign up for Tackle the Trib at varsity.evtrib.com, where you can pick weekly high school football winners and win prizes in doing so. And join us every Friday night at 6:30 p.m. for VX Live. Also on our website, constant scoring updates, interactions, and whatever else in the high school sporting world and beyond that you want to talk about. For Kyle Odegard, I am Mark Heller. Enjoy the season. We'll see you on Friday nights.